Do you get judgmental? Whether it's about yourself or others, of course we all do, and it's the one thing that can really hold us back from growth. Welcome, I'm Christina Smith, host of the Inviting Shift podcast, where we focus on how we can embrace authentic confidence and feel really good about how we show up for ourselves, our relationships, and the world. Today, our topic is judgment, or more accurately, curiosity over judgment. Let's start with judgment. Judgment is so easy. Our innate animal sense wants us to be safe. However, most of the time we have judgments and they're not really about keeping us safe as much as they are keeping us comfortable. Here's the truth. Self-love and confidence isn't always comfortable. We dig through our own ickiness in order to open our eyes to new truths, opportunities, and growth. Your perspective is limited. Curiosity is about being open to new ways of seeing the world and yourself. And you deserve to rethink your judgments. You deserve to be curious with yourself. You might find that you're not broken or unworthy. You've just been a butterfly in a world of hornets. Enjoy your unique gifts, but you can't find them if all you do is judge yourself rather than offer curiosity. So let's start with what judgment is so I can convince you why and how curiosity is going to change your life. Judgment definition: the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. Judgment is a great feature we humans were offered. I want you to hear that judgment keeps us safe. If I burned my hand on that fire once, I'll probably judge something about the fire and how I can keep myself safe in the future. We're lucky to have this feature as humans, or we probably would have gone extinct by now, right? We had to outrun tigers and bears at some point. We had to learn how to be in the world in a safe way. However, judgment goes way overboard. Let me explain. We start confusing harm with discomfort. As far as immediate safety, we have it far better than our ancestors in so many ways. So most of our thousands of decisions that we make in a day aren't really about true safety. It's about a lot of discomfort. Will I fail, embarrass myself, have to start again, waste time, waste money, and on and on. Most of these aren't putting us in physical danger. They would just be uncomfortable, and especially not in the original plan or the expectation, right? Our judgment sensitivity is so sensitive, it picks up on anything that might offer us some discomfort, which means it goes way out there. So if you imagine concentric circles, the one in the tiny is actually what judgment is keeping us safe from, that safety. But if we blow that up, every discomfort that we have, we act as if it is as important as safety. And don't get me wrong, safety is definitely worth judging. That's why we have the feature to begin with. Discomfort, though, is a normal part of life. Feeling embarrassed, having to start over, failing, living with imperfection, learning new things. It is okay to be uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is not unsafe. In fact, discomfort is often a sign of growth, and we can get comfortable with discomfort. So the amount we judge isn't helpful. Even though many of us have come to believe that our judgment is part of our identity, we can be so specific, so particular, we can really judge the best of the best, but that doesn't always help us in humaning. So what we want to do is learn how to ask ourselves the right questions so that we can be more curious. We want to remember that we only received one particular perspective, and there are many different possibilities in life. And we can shift our mindset. Our mindset is not fixed, it is growable. we can link new neural pathways so that we can have new behaviors and new ways of being and thinking that can put us on a path to what we truly want. But of course, it takes making those choices consciously over and over again. And hang on, we'll make it easier in a second. But have you ever had something happen that seemed disastrous, or at least the least thing you wanted to happen? Maybe you struggled to accept this thing when it did happen. Maybe you were able to see later how it was working for you, not against you. So maybe you broke up with that boyfriend and it turns out it was the best thing that ever happened to you, even though when the breakup happened, it felt like the worst thing that happened to you. But over time, it changes and you're like, of course, I needed that to happen so that these other wonderful things could happen. It happens all of the time. The reason it happens is because, here's the thing, when change happens, most of us don't like it. We like the routine, the comfortability that we were in before, and any change can be an automatic no rather than a curiosity to understand it first. Curiosity is the cure for judgment. So let's look at curiosity. What's the definition of curiosity? The desire to learn or know about anything. Inquisitiveness. The desire to learn or know about anything, inquisitiveness. So asking a lot of questions. And it always reminds me of this quote from Kristen Neff that says, being human is not about being any one particular way. It is about being as life creates you, with your own particular strengths and weaknesses, gifts and challenges, quirks and oddities. That's what being human is about. So we get to be curious. We don't have to fit into a mold. We get to be more curious. We don't have to think the one way that we were taught to think. So we can be more curious, even if bragging in life was something that you were told was not allowed to happen. We can revisit bragging, or celebrating ourselves is what I like to call it. And we can ask ourselves, is there any benefit to celebrating ourselves? I would say yes. But I would never say that if it wasn't about me getting more curious about it. In my judgmental mind, bragging and showing off are bad things because that's what I was taught when I was a little girl. But being curious, I can see, wow, some of the bravest, most courageous people are people who will say great things about themselves because they have accomplished great things and they should be able to claim that. So you deserve to rethink your judgments. You deserve to be curious with yourself and with life. You might even find that you are not broken or unworthy. Again, you've just been this butterfly in a world of hornets, that you are just different than the people that are around you, and that's okay. You can find more people and you can enjoy the ones that are already in your life. Most importantly, I want you to enjoy your unique gifts. We cannot find them unless we are more curious, unless we are open to seeing more of our own gifts. Here's the thing, it could be your judger that is off. Or you could be a perfectionist, which makes your judger off. Look, I don't know when perfectionism became a big goal of ours, but it's not possible. And being a perfectionist is not going to serve you in the long term. Judging and being able to judge perfection is probably not going to help you in the long term unless you're a professional critic. Growth happens when we get curious rather than judgmental, when we start believing that there's more possibilities that we're not seeing and being open to them. I want to share a story about a client I had. Let's call her Kim. She said to me, I tend to move straight to judgment when I think about myself. She had this negative thought cycle going on where one negative thought would come up and of course come rushing back the dozens and dozens of memories in which she did not get it right, where she failed, where she was made fun of or embarrassed. And so she would constantly tell herself that she was so flawed. And she even She even prized herself on the fact that she could be so judgmental, that she could see all the things that were not right when it seemed like other people could not. So perfectionism was part of her identity. And what realized was that she was expecting perfection, and when she didn't get perfection, she just completely gave up. So even though she believed in perfection, she wasn't getting a lot of things done. And by believing that there might be other ways to look at this, she realized that what she needed to be was more open to other ways, open to things not being perfect. That enough, that 80% was more change than 100%. If the 100% was never going to happen. And she said by being curious, she knows more about who she is. She's moved faster on her journey because she's curious. And by being curious, she started being more compassionate and believing that she didn't have to have the perfection in her, that she could actually focus more on her intentions, which were, I believe, joy and celebration. And by the way, judging life is less helpful too. Twists and turns happen, but we have these times where we've been crushed by something, and then again we look back and it's one of the best things that ever happened to us. And so sometimes we prejudge life, or we judge that things shouldn't have happened, and yet we look back and we're like, wow, that was really beautiful. I'm so glad that that happened. And I have one of these stories when I was dating a man when I was around 20 years old. And it was like the first time I was ever really truly in love. Like, I loved this man. I thought for sure he was the coolest guy. And one day he up and left me for his ex-girlfriend, and we were living together at the time. So I was crushed that he had decided to leave, and it was like out of nowhere, blew my mind. I think it took me like a good 6 months to get over the heartache of it, because it just seemed like the thing that should not have happened. This was perfect. It was beautiful. And of course, now looking back at it in my 40s or even in my 30s, I could see that this man probably would have been one of the worst things to happen to my life. So wherever you are, I am so grateful that you decided to break my heart, even though at the time I thought it was almost life-ending, as if nothing good was ever going to happen to me again, right? But now that I'm in hindsight, of course I can see that that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. So judging life, we can be just more open, and I'm going to help us with this in just a few minutes when we discuss some questions that we can look at to become more curious. So let's just talk about what's not helpful really quick. What's not helpful is judging ourselves. If we judge ourselves in our mind, we are judging everyone else too. And because we have living standards that we believe that we and everyone else should be living up to. And I know that a lot of us say that we don't judge others, and we do. And know that it's about your perspective. How we judge other people is about us. How they judge us is about them. That judgments don't make truth, right? Judgments are just opinions that we have from looking on the outside. So let's be mindful and listen to our inner wisdom. Another thing that I just want to talk about is charged emotions. If you're feeling charged or triggered, whatever your word for it is, extreme emotional overwhelm, it's going to feel more challenging to be curious. So go take care of your emotions first. Take care of, especially, it could even be a physical feeling like hunger or tired, right? But if you are feeling overwhelming anger, grief, sadness, anything that is really taking up the static of your brain, go be with that feeling. Allow that feeling to lessen a little bit before we try to be curious, because being curious when we're emotionally overwhelmed is not always the most helpful. Usually we'll go down that suffering spiral instead of staying grounded in truth and what is absolutely true rather than what we make up in our heads. So, right after this message, we're going to talk about some 5 questions that you can ask yourself so that you can be more curious about what is happening in your life rather than judgmental, so that we can open up possibilities and gifts and gold that you might not see just by judging and shutting it down. Because let's remember that judgment is about having a specific idea about something. So it's like you're closing it off to being possible to be anything else, right? So when we have a judgment, we're closing the idea off that situation, ourselves, the other person could be anything else. We put it in a box and we assume everything in that box is going to act and be the same way. When we are curious, we are much, much more open. We are looking for different perspectives. We are looking to see it through different angles so that we can see all of the possibilities, which keeps us really, really open, especially to abundance of ideas and perspectives and ways that will serve us. So right after this message, we're going to talk about those 5 questions that are going to keep you curious. This podcast is supported by Christina Smith Coaching as a service to get you to have more confidence and self-love. One way we do that is by bringing what we learn into our bodies, by lighting up our senses. Some people call these types of exercises rituals. I think they're really alignments. Something we do each day to align with what we truly want rather than getting stuck in the default of trying to outrun what we don't. I bet you could use a little self-love ritual today, and there's a short quiz or survey to pick the best one for you. You can go to the link in the description to take the free quiz to get the self-love alignment that is right for you right now. You'll also get a download of 5 self-love rituals so you can switch it up and try one each day. Our little thank you for tuning into our podcast and into your own heart. Okay, so we're back with the questions. And the questions start with one of my favorite, of course, they're all my favorites, but the questions in order to get into more curiosity and kind of let go of the judgment a little bit more so that we can open our perspective. Remember, being open. Is this safe, unsafe, or is this uncomfortable? Is this unsafe, or is this uncomfortable? So, starting a business. I have a client who is trying to start a business, and she's had a lot of fear in the last few years that have stopped her from really embracing this idea that she has. Even though she's really jazzed about it, she has a hard time speaking to people about it, believing that they might think that there's some value in it as well. And so in order to move forward, we started looking at, is this unsafe or is it uncomfortable? It is not unsafe for her to move forward with her business. It's just really, really uncomfortable. And so when we started looking at that, she could use her courage, which we'll be talking about in an upcoming episode. She could use her courage to keep moving forward, to walk with her fear, knowing that the fear was just telling her that there's going to be some hard things and it might be uncomfortable, but doesn't mean that it's unsafe. So what we want to figure out is this unsafe or is this uncomfortable? And most of the time in our lives, you're going to find it's just uncomfortable. It's a hard thing that we have to do, and we can get through it if we can be more curious. What is the best way I could get through this? If these are my fears, and that's going to lead us to our next question. The next question is, what is the message behind this feeling? Feelings are messengers. the fear, the anger, the sadness. When we are curious, we can ask ourselves, what is this feeling trying to tell me? It could be telling me, wow, you're about to do something new. You might not get it right. That's uncomfortable. That's not unsafe, right? It might be telling us that we're really angry because our justice fighter is up, and it's saying that's not right. The way that that person's behaving is not right, or I didn't stand up for what I wanted to stand up for. So anger is telling us something. Sadness is telling us something. Our feelings are a gift to our humanness. They're not a flaw. I know most of us think that feelings are unimportant, precocious, that they just don't really need all of the attention that they seem to want to take from us. And that's because we haven't been tuning into the messages, that they've been so uncomfortable that we just want to put them on a shelf and ignore them. And that's not how feelings work. They'll keep coming up until we actually hear the message that they're trying to bring to us. And this message is a new truth about ourselves. It could be a treasure trove of our own intuitive wisdom. When we connect to feelings without judging them or allowing them to take over, we can just be curious about the message. And then when they come up, we can see that, oh, that's that message of abandonment, that I feel like I'm being abandoned. Oh, Christina, you're not being abandoned. You're okay, right? I can talk truth to it. And when I talk truth to it, those emotional triggers become less and less. When we ignore feelings, they build up and they keep getting triggered by the message. If we can tune into the message, then we can tell ourselves the truth about how we can let go of the trigger. For example, I have a client, we'll call her Sarah. And Sarah gets highly triggered because she believes that everybody wants too much from her. And so she believes that this is other people's problem because the expectation, but really the wound is not pleasing others enough. She has a wound that she needs to make people happy, that if she needs to say yes, she needs to serve others to the detriment of herself. Her cup goes empty and exhausted and she gets sick. Here's the thing. She says she makes boundaries, but that other people cross them. But that's not true because other people are not responsible for holding up our boundaries. Her boundary has to be a hard no when it comes to serving some people because she's only got so much time and energy in her life. However, she has to move through the truth each time, and the truth to her is reminding herself that it is not her job to please everyone. That's the truth. So when she thinks about this judgment or this trigger that comes up, what happens is she feels it's the other people's fault. But when she tells herself the truth, she realizes that it's her job to say no. She doesn't have to say yes. She can hold her boundaries. And the more that she practices holding her boundaries, the easier it gets for her. Today, it's not very hard for her to say no because she tells herself she deserves to hold her own boundaries. And that's actually her affirmation. I deserve to hold my own boundaries and say no. And she realizes this trigger still comes up, especially when certain people ask her for things or, she tries to guilt trip her into saying yes. Of course, the trigger can still come up. And she still has to remind herself that she deserves to hold her boundaries and say no. And it's not that electric shock of an emotion that it once was. It's become a lot less. It's so much easier for her to say no now. So, first two questions, is this unsafe or uncomfortable? Second question, what is the message behind this feeling? The third one, now this question did not come from a personal growth coach. This actually came from a sales coach that I had once when I was in a corporate world. What if the opposite is true? What if the opposite is true? So you know how we always think about the worst case scenario? But what if it's the best case scenario? We rarely think about the best case scenario, except when we're dreaming and envisioning this big vision, right? And then it quickly fleets to all of the hard things that we have to do to make that vision true. Here's the thing. Judgment isn't necessarily bad. Again, it was developed to keep us safe. Today, though, it just keeps us thinking small most of the time. And that small space is usually focused on that worst case scenario. What if instead the best happens? What would that look like? What would that feel like? In order to become more curious, we have to balance out our thinking because our judgment wants to go way to that negative side, way too much. So we need to balance and focus on what we want to focus on, because whatever we focus on grows. And if we're focusing on what we don't want, we're growing that instead of growing what it is that we actually do want. This curiosity, more perspectives, more possibilities. What if you are already an amazing woman? What if you win? What if you showed up and rocked it, right? What is the opposite that might also have the same possibility of happening as that worst case scenario? Chances are, most of the time, it's somewhere in between, but it's one way that we can balance out our thoughts so that we can be more curious, that we're not just stuck in that negative box. Okay. Next question. One of my favorites again. How can I love or accept this? How can I love or accept this? Look, I'm against being positive for positivity's sake. I think it's crap. Silver linings were never my thing. This is about being curious about the hard situation, person or the thing or or whatever it is, and being objective about the true gifts that this may bring. We have to be honest. Everything comes with pros and cons, everything. And so if there are so many cons, there's probably a couple of pros too. I'm not saying that this is something you're going to settle with forever. I'm saying, how can we love it or accept it in this moment? And it can be hard. For an example, my son left to go in the army. The truth is, I was really sad about his childhood being over. I had some thoughts about all the things that we should have, could have, would have done. And I truly felt love and gratitude for him because I knew he was making his way in the world and becoming the man he wanted to be. So both are true. That's the balance, right? Those are the pros and the cons. That yes, he is off being an awesome man and I really miss him. So how can I love this? I can love the fact that he's becoming the person he is supposed to be, right? It's true. So I'm looking for the things that are true. I'm not making up positive linings. I'm not just saying, oh, it's for the best. I don't know if it's for the best. I know that he's doing what he's doing and he's getting benefit out of it, right? So both can be true. We're looking for balance. The last question that I'm going to talk about when it comes to curiosity is, what can I celebrate? What can I celebrate? Again, not about being positive for positivity's sake, but there's always something we can be celebrating. Celebration is important. And most of us, we were told about bragging or showing off, telling people about our accomplishments, right? I want you to brag and show off. I love nothing more than when somebody is celebrating themselves out loud. It builds what we do right rather than focusing on what we did wrong. I even had a client ask me one time, what if I close a new deal every day? Do you expect me to celebrate every day? And I want to tell you, yes, I do. I do expect you to celebrate every day. Self-love, confidence, and celebration go together. We spend a ton of time judging and fixing ourselves. We need to spend more time celebrating the being that we really are. Did a hard thing? Celebrate. Didn't cheat on your diet? Celebrate. Got up this morning even though you didn't want to? We're going to celebrate. It's okay to celebrate who you are. So just to review, 5 questions. Is this unsafe or uncomfortable? What is the message behind this feeling? What if the opposite is true? How can I love or accept this? And what can I celebrate? Look, the synopsis is judgment just doesn't help us as much as we think it does. It's a great feature when it comes to safety, but when it comes to thinking about ourselves and self-esteem and confidence and self-love, judgment doesn't help us as much as we think it does. So I have included a link to a visualization that will help you really step into the curiosity, especially of the unknown. So if you're feeling scared because there's some kind of new situation or conflict or struggle coming up and you're like, or you just want to build a giant dream and you're like, I don't even know how I can get there, I want you to try out the visualization that's attached. There's no sign up required. You can just go to the blog post and you can find this beautiful visualization about being curious of the unknown so that you can feel more courageous just by being more curious and open to other perspectives. I hope that today has been helpful. I hope those 5 questions are going to help you be more curious rather than judgmental. Because I want to tell you, living in a black and white world isn't going to help us be with each other or even with ourselves. So be more curious. That's how I invite you to be gentle with your human. Hey, one more thing. When we are all more confident and full of self-love, we can act more intentionally and mindfully. What would a world like that look like? I want to know. One way that you can help me with this vision is to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps more than you know, and it's just a few clicks to help me create a more beautiful world. And as always, remember to be gentle with your humanness.